Hello, and welcome in my little corner of the internet. My name is Jess, and here we read all kinds of stories. Some are true stories, some fiction, and some true stories that we sometimes wish were fiction. We do them all. So if you're into intriguing, dark, and scary tales, it's time to kick back, chill, and relax. If you're new here, welcome. Stay a bit, see if you like it. We'd love to have you. Now tonight's chapter. The Silver Wolf Queen. Chapter 13. The Spear of Ravens. The chamber had fallen completely silent. Even the fire seemed reluctant to crackle. Corvin stood in the center of the room, his black spear resting lightly against the stone floor. Around him, the ravens waited without a single unnecessary movement. None of them looked toward their commander anymore. Their eyes remained fixed on one man, Master Corvin. Darius had spent a lifetime studying people. He'd learned that true authority was never loud. It didn't need to be. The most dangerous leaders rarely raised their voices. They simply expected to be obeyed. Corvin was one of those men. His pale eyes never left Rowan. "You've grown stronger." Rowan's answer came quietly. "Well, I had good teachers." "You had but one." Corvin tilted his head. "You ignored the rest of them." A faint smile crossed Rowan's face. "Correction. I just learned which lessons mattered." For the first time, Corvin spun his spear. The weapon moved so quickly it became little more than a blur before coming to rest once again in his hand. A simple movement. Effortless. Yet every raven standing in the chamber unconsciously took a step backward. Darius noticed, and that told him everything he needed to know. Even these elite hunters respected what that spear could do. Or feared it. Either way. "I'll make you one offer," Corvin's voice echoed softly through the chamber. "Surrender." Rowan laughed. It wasn't a loud laugh. It wasn't mocking. It was simply tired. "You still don't understand." "No, I already escaped." Corvin studied him for a long moment, then slowly nodded. "I wondered if you'd say that." His grip shifted slightly. "The boy I trained would never have spoken those words." "The boy you trained is dead." Something flickered behind Corvin's calm expression. Regret, perhaps? Gone almost before it appeared. Perhaps. Then he raised the spear. "So, let's see what the man has become." Without warning, he moved. Darius had seen Rowan fight. He had seen the Raven commander move with frightening speed, but neither came close to this. In one heartbeat, Corvin stood 20 feet away. The next moment, the black spear was already driving toward Rowan's chest. Steel rang through the chamber. Rowan barely managed to cross his twin knives in time, and the force of the impact threw him backward across the stone floor. He slid several yards before catching himself. Darius' eyes widened. Impossible. Corvin hadn't even looked as though he'd tried. Rowan rose slowly, rolling one shoulder to ease the pain. He always hits that hard. Corvin smiled faintly. "I've become slower. You've become older. So have you." The words ended, and immediately the fight began again. This time Rowan attacked first. His knives flashed through the air in a whirlwind of black steel. Left, right, high and low. A relentless series of strikes designed to overwhelm even the finest swordsman. Corvin never stepped backward. Not once. His spear flowed through the attacks like water. Blocking, redirecting, deflecting. Every movement was precise. Beautiful. It wasn't merely combat. It was discipline turned into art. Darius found himself staring. I've never seen anything like this. Beside him, Aldrin sighed quietly. Sadly, I have. He watched the duel with sad eyes. I spent 30 years teaching them both. The rhythm of steel filled the chamber. Knife, spear, knife, spear. Neither fighter gained ground. Neither seemed capable of making a mistake. Until Corvin suddenly changed his grip and Aldrin's expression changed instantly. Rowan, watch out. But the warning came a fraction too late. The butt of the spear struck Rowan squarely across the ribs. The crack echoed through the chamber. Rowan was thrown sideways, crashing hard against one of the ancient stone pillars. His knives clattered across the floor. The chamber fell silent. Corvin lowered the spear. His breathing remained perfectly steady. Some things never change. You still leave your left side open. Rowan coughed, struggling to draw a full breath. Then, slowly, he smiled. Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth. I know. Corvin frowned. Then why? Rowan looked past him. Toward Darius. Toward Aldrin. Then back again. Because you always fall for it. He pushed himself upright. I wasn't trying to beat you. A puzzled look crossed Corvin's face. I was just buying some time. Behind the old teacher, Aldrin had quietly reached the hidden passage. His hand rested on a second stone mechanism concealed within the wall. Corvin's eyes widened. Aldrin, no. The old man smiled. You taught them how to fight. He pressed the stone. But I taught them how to survive. Then, a deep rumble shook the whole mountain. The mountain groaned from deep within the earth. A deep rumble rolled through the chamber as dust drifted from the ceiling. The ancient stone pillars trembled, and loose rocks bounced across the floor. Every raven instinctively looked upward. Every raven except Corvin. His pale eyes never left Aldrin. What have you done? The old teacher smiled faintly. Finished what I started. Another violent tremor shook the room. A section of the ceiling cracked with a sound like thunder. Chunks of stone crashed onto the chamber floor, sending clouds of dust swirling through the firelight. The younger ravens immediately broke formation. Not from panic. From training. Each moved to avoid the falling debris while still keeping the exits covered. Corvin alone stood perfectly still. He understood. This mountain was never built to keep people out. Aldrin nodded. The old man tightened his grip on his staff. It was built to trap those who refused to leave. Darius frowned. You mean, there are chambers beneath us? Aldrin pointed toward the floor. Old escape routes. Collapse one level? He smiled. And the rest seal themselves automatically. Rowan slowly pushed himself away from the pillar, one hand pressed against his bruised ribs. You planned this? For 18 years. Corvin finally sighed. I underestimated you. You always did. Without warning, the chamber lurched violently to one side. A massive crack split the stone floor between the ravens and the others. The fire pit collapsed into the widening gap, sending burning logs tumbling into darkness. Heat rushed upward. Then, silence. No one could see the bottom. The crack stretched from wall to wall, cutting the room in half. And for the first time the ravens had lost control of the battlefield. One of the younger hunters attempted to leap across. Corvin stopped him with a single raised hand. No. The raven froze instantly. Corvin studied the widening chasm. Aldrin wants us to follow. The old teacher inclined his head. I was hoping you'd notice. Darius looked toward the hidden passage. So we leave now? Not yet, Aldrin replied. Why not? Because The old man glanced toward Corvin. He deserves the truth. The chamber fell quiet again. Even Rowan looked confused. Corvin's expression remained unreadable. What truth? Aldrin drew a slow breath. The day Rowan's father died. His voice echoed softly through the ruined chamber. He wasn't alone. Corvin's grip tightened around his spear. You should stop talking now. I've spent 18 years doing exactly that. Aldrin shook his head. I'm tired. The old teacher looked directly into Corvin's eyes. You didn't kill Rowan's father. No one moved. Not even Corvin. Aldrin continued. You wounded him, yes. A pause. But someone else delivered the final blow. For the first time since entering the chamber, Corvin looked genuinely shaken. That's impossible. You know it isn't. Another long silence followed. Darius watched the man's face carefully. Little flashes of tiny changes. Almost invisible. But they were there. The certainty. The confidence. The absolute belief he'd carried for 20 years. Cracks had begun to appear. You were unconscious, Aldrin said quietly. You never saw who entered the execution chamber after you. Rowan stared at Corvin. Then at Aldrin. His pulse thundered in his ears. If Corvin didn't kill him, he struggled to finish the sentence. Who did? Aldrin opened his mouth to answer. But then a sharp whistle echoed from somewhere deep below the collapsing chamber. Not above. Below. Everyone turned toward the widening chasm. Another whistle answered. Then another. Corvin's face hardened. No. Darius looked at him. What is it? What the hell is going on? Who is that? Corvin's voice had become little more than a whisper. Malachar. The name hung in the air. Heavy. Impossible. If Malachar himself had come to the mountain, then that means that this hunt had never been about Rowan alone. It had always been something much bigger than what they were told. The grinding beneath the mountain grew louder. It wasn't the sound of crumbling stone. It was deliberate. Slow. Ancient gears, untouched for centuries, were beginning to turn once more, and the vibration traveled through the floor, into the pillars and up the walls of the chamber. Dust drifted from the ceiling like falling snow. No one spoke. Everyone listened. Even the ravens. Aldrin's face had become as pale as the stones surrounding them. I prayed I would never hear that sound again. Darius looked at him. You've heard it before? The old man nodded slowly. Once. I was only a boy. His eyes remained fixed on the widening chasm. My own teacher brought me here. He wanted me to remember it. Remember what? Aldrin took a long breath. The day the last kings disappeared. The words settled over the chamber. Heavy. Final. Corvin stepped closer. You've never told anyone that story. I wasn't supposed to. And now? Aldrin looked at Rowan. Now the last heir is standing before me. He rested both hands on the top of his walking staff. There is no reason to keep silent any longer. Another deep rumble shook the mountain, and far below, something massive slammed into place. The echo rolled upward through the hidden tunnels. Aldrin closed his eyes as he spoke. The 7 royal houses knew the kingdom would fall. They knew betrayal had already reached the palace. They knew Malachar's armies couldn't be stopped forever. Rowan listened without blinking. So they hid. Aldrin slowly shook his head. No. They sacrificed themselves. Silence. They sent their families away. They scattered the surviving bloodlines across the continent. They buried every record that could lead the enemy to them. His gaze settled on Rowan. Your father was one of the last children to escape. Darius frowned. And Ivy? Aldrin looked surprised. You know of the Silver Wolf? I've heard enough. The old man smiled faintly. Then fate has finally begun weaving the threads together. Corvin lowered his spear. If the bloodline survived, it means they can unite again. Aldrin nodded. That has always been Malakar's greatest fear. One of the younger ravens spoke for the first time. But the silver wolves are extinct. No. Everyone turned toward Rowan. His voice was quiet. Certain. They're alive. The chamber fell silent once more. Corvin studied him carefully. So, it wasn't just a rumor. Rowan met his gaze. I've seen them. I've fought beside them. And I'd rather die than let Malakar find them. The words echoed through the chamber. Every raven heard them. Some lowered their eyes. Others remained perfectly still. Only Corvin continued watching Rowan. Then, very slowly, he smiled. Not the cold smile of a master. Not the calculated smile of a hunter. A proud smile. He gave a slight shake of his head. The boy I trained would never have said that. Rowan answered without hesitation. I told you. That boy is gone. A sudden scream echoed from somewhere deep beneath the mountain. Not a shout. A scream of absolute terror. It lasted only seconds before ending abruptly. Every head turned toward the chasm. Another scream followed. Then another. This time, it wasn't one voice. It was several. Ravens. The elite hunters standing in the chamber looked at one another. Confusion spread through their disciplined ranks. What is happening down there? No one answered. Even Corvin didn't know. Then, something climbed out of the darkness. A pale hand. Human. Well, almost human. Long fingers gripped the broken edge of the chasm. Another hand appeared beside it. Then, slowly, a figure pulled itself into the firelight. Its armor was ancient silver, blackened by age. Its face was hidden behind a cracked wolf-shaped helmet. In one skeletal hand, it still carried a sword. The figure stood without making a sound. Then another armored warrior climbed from the darkness. And another. Aldrin's eyes widened with horror. His walking staff slipped from his grasp. It can't be. Darius swallowed. What are they? The old man whispered only 3 words. The king's guardians. No one had seen one in 1,000 years. And yet somehow, they were still standing. No one moved. The armored figures stood motionless at the edge of the shattered floor, the cracked wolf-shaped helmet hiding whatever face still lay beneath it. Its silver armor was scarred by countless battles, yet not a trace of rust stained the metal. It had waited beneath the mountain for 1,000 years, and time itself seemed to have forgotten it. A third guardian climbed from the darkness. Then a fourth. Each carried a different weapon. A sword. A long axe. A heavy spear whose silver tip still gleamed despite the passing centuries. None of them spoke. None of them breathed. Yet the chamber suddenly felt overcrowded. Even the ravens instinctively stepped back. Darius tightened his grip on his sword. What in God's name is happening? Aldrin never took his eyes off the silent warriors. They were chosen from the greatest fighters of every royal house. His voice had become almost reverent. They swore an oath that even death could not break. One of the younger ravens laughed nervously. Dead men don't guard kingdoms. The words had barely left his mouth when the nearest guardian slowly turned its head. The movement was almost imperceptible. A tiny scrape of ancient metal echoed through the chamber. Every raven fell silent. The guardian wasn't looking at Rowan, or Corvin, or Aldrin. It was staring directly at the young raven who had spoken. The soldier swallowed. It heard me. No, Aldrin whispered. It judged you. The guardian lifted its sword. Not in attack. In recognition. The blade pointed toward the raven's chest. For one endless heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the young raven cried out. He staggered backward, clutching his chest as though an invisible hand had seized his heart. His sword slipped from numb fingers. He collapsed to one knee, gasping for air. What is this? Corvin moved immediately to his side. There wasn't a wound. No blood. No visible injury. Yet the young warrior's strength vanished before their eyes. His hair began turning gray. Lines appeared across his face. His hands trembled with sudden age. Within seconds, he looked 20 years older. The guardian lowered its sword and the change stopped instantly. Silence consumed the chamber. Darius stared in disbelief. It didn't even strike him. Aldrin slowly shook his head. No, it weighed him. And he was found wanting. The old teacher drew a slow breath. The guardians were never just ordinary soldiers. They were bound to the oldest magic of the Silver Kingdom. They see what lies inside a person's soul. Corvin rose slowly. His expression remained calm, but his eyes betrayed him. And for the first time since Rowan had known him, Master Corvin looked uncertain. One by one, the remaining guardians climbed from the darkness until 7 silent figures stood upon the ancient stone. 7. Again, that number. Each guardian wore armor engraved with a different crest. A wolf, a stag, a hawk, a serpent, a lion, a bear, and the final warrior. Its breastplate bore the symbol Rowan had seen only in Aldrin's hidden books. A silver crown surrounded by 7 stars. Aldrin's knees nearly gave way. The High King's Guard. His whisper barely carried across the chamber. I thought they were only a legend. The final guardian slowly raised its head. From somewhere behind its cracked helmet, a pair of pale silver eyes opened. Not glowing. Watching. Patiently. Waiting for someone to take the first step. No one dared. And that's where we'll leave the story for now. For the first time in 1,000 years, the King's Guardians have stepped back into the light. Not as legends and not as ghosts, but as living oaths, bound by ancient magic to protect the Silver Kingdom long after the men beneath the armor had drawn their final breath. The ravens, the deadliest hunters in the kingdom, have finally met an enemy they don't understand. Even Master Corvin, a man who has never questioned his own skill, now stands before a power older than the Order itself. But perhaps the greatest revelation wasn't the Guardians. It was what they did. Without raising a weapon, one of them judged a raven with nothing more than a glance. Whatever magic still lives beneath these mountains doesn't care about rank, reputation, or fear. It sees something far deeper. And if it can judge an enemy, what will it see when it looks upon Rowan? Or Ivy? Far away, the Silver Wolf Queen still doesn't know that the ancient protectors of her ancestors have awakened. But destiny has begun pulling every thread together. The 7 royal houses, the lost bloodlines, the ravens, the silver wolves, all of them are moving toward the same moment. In the next chapter, the Guardians will finally speak after 1,000 years of silence. Rowan will learn why House Ashcroft was chosen to survive, and Ivy will receive a vision that reveals the true queen of the Silver Kingdom for the very first time. If you're enjoying the Silver Wolf Queen, every subscriber brings us one step closer to our next community milestone and helps this community continue to grow with every chapter we share together. So please subscribe. It really does make a difference. Thank you for spending part of your day with me. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is there. I always love seeing how far these stories travel across the world. Until next time, be blessed and stay safe out there.